Hey everybody, Alex here, and welcome to another video. No silly intro this time. Um, this video is going to be a little bit somber, I think, to say the least. But I also think it's a little fitting because the old Base to the Past videos are now uploaded. I have them all as private, and I've labeled them as retro, so you can tell. The hair will tell you how long ago it was, because none of this will be here to start. But I would like to know if you guys would like them all up at once, or if you'd rather I trickle them out. Reason there being is I either bombard the notification box or just your sub box, which YouTube doesn't show anybody anything anyway. Or I trick them out like once a week, and then maybe I can move up in the algorithm. But whatever you guys want, I'll do it. And in terms of collection videos, Super Nintendo one's up. Thank you to everybody who stayed through the whole thing. That was a bear to do. It was fun. I really enjoyed it. I'm very happy with it. I just I didn't honestly, I didn't think it was going to be an hour. And it obviously was. And that's after I edited it. So I think the next collection videos won't be as long. I know some people asked for the Vita. So when I feel up for doing it again and digging everything out, I'll certainly do it. And you have to forgive me, I'm massaging my stupid shoulder because I decided to stretch, and all of a sudden it's decided it wants to be a pain in the ass all over again. But anyway, so the reason why I say this video is going to be a little bit somber is because if some of you guys remember, I know some of you have already messaged me, which, I eventually put two and two together. We are, as of this recording, coming up on the 1 year anniversary of my mom passing away. And it's weird. To those of you who still are lucky enough to have both of your parents, it's very weird. I know Adam Korlick recently, for those of you who follow him, I know he recently lost his mom. And it's a very, I don't care if you're close or not, you feel like shit, to say the least. And this past year, not counting 2020, hasn't been that easy. On several different standpoints, emotionally, everything. So on the day that I finally have all the Base to the Past videos up, I thought I would do one kind of about my mom. And I think it's fitting, but I also have to be honest with you. She was never really into games. Like I've said before, she kind of defaulted my uncle to this stuff because she really didn't get it. To her, the Nintendo games were the Sega Genesis games, were the Sega Saturn games, were the Dreamcast games. So everything was Nintendo, and they were Nintendo tapes. They weren't CDs; they were tapes. And the new Mario was also Sonic. The new Mario was Final Fantasy. That's really what it was for her. And, she never really got the hobby, I'd say, but there were certain times where I feel like she really would embrace it, or at the very least, kind of take a jab at it, to put it lightly. But I think really to give an idea of that, I kind of have to explain my mom's personality. So my mom grew up on Long Island, where Bithead 1000 lives, and she does not speak like Bithead 1000, but based on what I think he does for a living, my mom grew up in a very blue-collar house. And my mom grew up in the 60s, so she was a hippie. And my mom has always been a very understanding person and a very kind and very loving person. However, if you pissed her off, you were shit out of luck. And I think that's really due to her upbringing. So I'll give you a good example. So my mom was in real estate management. Not in terms of like agents. She actually was capital projects for a firm. And when a building went up, she's the one who got all the contractors and everything else. So I'll never forget, she told me this story one day when I was visiting, when I just moved out. So she was working on a condo that was opening up in Long Island City, which is still developing. And they were building this condo right by the highway. And with the construction team, they had a deadline. And if they beat the deadline, they get a bonus. So they decided to cheap out on the windows, which were right facing the highway, and they didn't put in soundproof because it would have taken longer to get them. And this guy insists on trying to make his bike fucking work. Anyway, so my mom's doing the walkthrough with him, and she points out, like, I can hear everything from the street. And he goes, well, yeah, because, we were in a time crunch, so we decided, not to wait for the soundproof glass, and, we just put up this glass, but, the quality's still there. And my mom just looked at him dead in the face, and she goes, so when I start getting complaints about noise from the outside, I'm going to send them to your fucking house. Put in the right goddamn windows. I don't care if you get your bonus or not. What I do care about are the people that are going to live in this building. Either you fix it, or I find somebody else who will. Point blank, no bullshit, guy fixed the windows. But at the same time, my mom was also super kind. She was very much one of those people that would say, see something going on, and she would she would do like one of these things, like, help, like, I'd be like, let me catch my breath, or at least I have a cracked rib now. But she was always like that, and she always liked to keep, I guess, a second set of eyes on everything. Just if she could step in or she could help. She always wanted to help. That was always her thing. But at the same time, she demanded results. And when I was a kid, I wasn't really that good of a student. So my mom, who also wasn't that good of a student, would study with me every night. But she also knew I was a kid and I was approaching my teenage years. So, of course, flatulence was, the big joke for me. So when my mom was grilling me on history stuff, dates and whatnot, she would make up little rhymes that rotated around farts and parts of the female and male anatomy, because at least that way I would remember them. And to this day, I still remember them. And I'm not going to say any of them here. But, that's just, she knew how to get through to people. And at the same time, like, as I said, if you crossed her, you got the nails, as it were. But when it came to games, my mom, like I said, she knew what Nintendo was, but she never really got super into it. She never really tried to play with me or anything like that. But there were some instances with games where it just cracks me up, like, thinking about it. So when I was a little kid, I used to play in Little League. Now, admittedly, I am terrible at baseball. I think I was last in the batting lineup, and they put me in left field, where the ball never goes, just because they didn't trust me with anything. But at this particular time, NBA Jam was coming out on the Super Nintendo, and I was huge into basketball at the time. And I couldn't find a basketball league to play in, so I had to default to baseball, because my mom was like, listen, this kid's got to play on a fucking team, and he has to make friends. I can't keep this shit up. I'm drinking too much wine. He's stressing me out. So she used to take me to these baseball games. My mom used to get hit on by the coach, which I found out later, obviously. And she liked it because she liked to go, but she hated the fact that I wasn't really that super into it. But she wanted me to be into sports. And eventually, I really discovered soccer, but basketball was my thing. And my mom got really into it too. To put in perspective, for those of you that are old enough to remember this was back when the Knicks were good. So we're talking like 150 years ago, when Pat Riley was coach, and Patrick Ewing and John Starks and Charles Oakley and all those guys, Hubert Davis, all those dudes were on the team. Then NBA Jam comes out, and I had only heard about it through Nintendo Power, and I really, really, really wanted it. And we couldn't find it anywhere, because this was like king shit game. It was expensive. I think it was like $79.99. And at that point in time, we didn't really have a lot of cash to float around. My dad was working overseas. Anyway, my dad was working overseas, And even though my dad was getting paid for what he did, like this wasn't like today where it's like you wire the money and it gets there in 2 days. This was a little bit more complicated than that. So for me to get this game, I started to sell stuff as a little kid at school. So I was selling, my basketball cards, doubles and stuff. I was selling comic books I had, all this stuff. Um, I think some of my Marvel trading cards too, actually, because I was really into that. So baseball game comes and I have literally like a wad of cash, all dollars for like 82.88 or something like that. And the plan was we were going to go to the Toys R Us that was by our house and buy the game. Little did I know, my mom went in the morning and it was sold out. Um, so we're at the basketball game. We're at the baseball game, and pretty much I am just waiting for this game to fucking end. Like I'm going up there, I'm purposely striking out just so we could speed this up a little bit, right? And my mom is kind of just like, she's really super duper quiet about the whole thing. And then she remembers there's a KB Toys by where we play baseball. And in the middle of the game, she leaves, just walks off. I don't know what happened. I was kind of like panicked at the time. She comes back and she has the KB bag with her, and she found the game. She went and she bought it and made sure I had it. And then when I got home, much like the little kid I was, I ripped the box apart. I took the manual. I went in the bathroom for half an hour and I read it. And then I played the game for about 3 or 4 days and got blisters. Now, on one standpoint, she wasn't crazy at the fact that I was sitting around playing this game all the time, but she also recognized that this was something I was super into. And at the next week, when I went to play baseball, I was bragging to one of the kids on the team. I was like, "Have you played NBA Jam?" He's like, "Yeah, man, it's sold out everywhere." I'm like, "Well, my mom found it." And she's in the back like, "Yeah, straight." Which reminds me of another instance with my mom. By the way, this is not totally going to be about games, but I think if anything, the reminiscing is pretty good. An instance of my mom being really super defensive to making sure her son was spoiled fucking rotten. Um, when I was growing up, we lived by a Toys R Us. It was a Kiddie City, and then it turned into a Toys R Us. And we're talking like the time of the Power Rangers. And I think I may have mentioned this story before, but just in case I haven't, it was Christmas. Power Rangers were the big toy. Now, I had a few already, but I needed the Pink Ranger, I needed the Black Ranger, and the Green Ranger. Forget it. You cannot find them anywhere. And at the time, they just released all the new Zords, including the giant freaking turtle one that I can't remember the name of. Of course, I wanted it. So my mom was going to Toys R Us every day before work and after work to see if any shipments came in. So one day she's there, and at this point she knew her way around the store like a kid. She knew exactly where to go. I would imagine she also knew where I hid the tickets for the video games. But she's in the store, and there's one of the giant turtle Zord, I can't remember the name, at the top of the shelf. And we're talking like one of those things where you have to get a guy to come with a ladder to pull it down. And my mom is there after work. She's in heels, and she's ready. She's looking around trying to find somebody, but she sees another mom literally right at it. And my mom's like, "Oh no, I'm not playing this fucking game." She took off her heels, she climbed up the shelves, and she pulled it down. Like, I don't know how high it was, but if I was there today and I saw this, I'd be freaking pissed off at her. She was at least 6 feet off the ground. Must have been. So she gets down with this box. How she did it, I don't know, because she had no hands. And it was a huge box. Like, we're talking like bigger than this. So my mom gets off the shelf with the Zord in her hand, and the other mom goes, "Bitch, I saw it first." And my mom goes, "Well, you weren't the motherfucker who climbed the shelves, now were you?" That was the end of the conversation. My mom walked out with it, and then she tried to figure out how she was going to sneak into the house for a couple of hours. But again, like, that's just how she rolled with like a lot of stuff. It was no shit. If it was somebody she cared about, she would do anything. She'd do a lot. But probably one of my more more favorite memories of her, with games particularly, was when I got older and I moved out and everything else, my mom, I went to visit one day, and my mom and I were sitting there and we were talking. She goes, "Remember when you were a kid?" And I was like, "I think I still am a kid." She goes, "Every Sunday at 8 a.m., we would wake up and we'd watch that Mega Man cartoon. If you don't know this Mega Man cartoon, it's horrendous." But she'd watch it with me every morning. She goes, "Yeah." And then she was like, around that time, I don't think it was the same day, but you started to watch Pokemon. I was like, "Yeah, Pokemon, yeah." I was like, "Yeah, that's a thing." And she goes, "Whatever happened to that?" I'm like, "Oh, it's still around." She's like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah, actually, I'm playing the new one right now." She's like, "Alex, you're 23 fucking years old. How are you still playing Pokemon?" I was like, "Mom, please. It's Pokemon, and it's fine." And she goes, "Are you still playing it on the Game Boy?" And I'm like, "Mom, the Game Boy is gone." Like, she had no idea. So we're talking about all this, and then maybe a year or two later, I come home, and I'm with a group of my friends from work at the time. And the executive chef was like is a really close friend of mine. So I was playing whatever the latest version of Pokemon was, and he was too. And he got the opposite version. The idea was we were gonna battle each other. So we get back to the house. We go back to my parents' house because we were in the area, and I wanted to say hi, and he wanted to meet her and my dad. So, I introduced him and everything else, and I put my DS on the table. And my mom goes, "Oh, you're still playing that thing?" And I go, "Yeah." And she goes, "What are you playing?" I'm like, "Oh, Pokemon." She goes, "Oh, Pokemon, Alex, you're 20 some odd years old. How are you still playing Pokemon?" He pulls out his DS and throws it down, and he goes, "32-year-old man playing it too." And she's just like, "Oh my God, I can't believe this crap." She's like, "Well, when are you going to grow up?" And then here's the irony of the whole thing. One of the last times my mom, well, my parents actually came to this apartment, I had just finished putting up my little shelf shrine thing. And she looks at it and she goes, "You never did grow up, did you?" And I said, "No, but it's better this way, right?" And she's like, "Yeah, kind of." And she always said, as a parent, she was like, one of the things she always wished was that she could reverse time and do everything all over again. Not change anything, but just to re-experience it. And she never knew about this channel, and how I kind of just regurgitated all this funny and stupid shit that happened to me growing up. But I think that's kind of like the whole purpose of all this, and what got me into YouTube in general was just remembering all this great stuff. And sometimes it's not all so great. And the last example I want to give of my mom and me was Nintendo Power used to do like a mail away thing. You could get like stickers for your controllers, you get pogs, cards, t-shirts, stationery, like silly kid shit from the 90s. And I wanted to order like everything. And again, at the time, my parents didn't really. My dad was still overseas, I think, or maybe he wasn't working at the time. And my mom, she was doing better financially, but still adjusting because we had just moved back from Long Island. 'Cause I don't know if I mentioned this before, but we lived with my grandparents for a year, just due to a bunch of wackiness that went on in the background. And I literally picked out like all this stuff in the catalog. I don't even know how much it was, but this was around the time where, you'd either call and give your info over the phone, or you'd mail a check and then wait for them to get it, and then you'd wait for them to send it. So I was under the impression my mom sent a check for all this stuff. Days went by, weeks went by, I think 2 months went by. And then finally I went up to my mom and I said, "I think it's lost in the mail." And she's like, "What are you talking about?" I go, "This stuff for Nintendo. It never showed up." And she's like, "Oh, no, no. Let me call them." Maybe 2 weeks later, the box finally showed up. And I was thrilled. I was so excited. I was so happy. And then once I got older and stuff changed and I grew up a little bit, I said, "Hey, Mom, remember the time I ordered all that stuff from Nintendo Power?" She's like, "Alex, it was so embarrassing." She's like, "I couldn't afford it. I lied to you for like a month and a half until I had enough money to get all that stuff. And she goes, and it wasn't even a lot of money. I just couldn't do it. I told you it was lost in the mail. I told you we had to reorder it. I told you to like put a stop payment on the check. She walked around with the order slip in her purse for like a month and a half until she had enough money to do it. And I think must have been like 8. So there was no way I could have even done it, figured out money for myself at the time anyway. But she knew it meant a lot to me. And, you know, I used those stickers on my SNES controllers until I don't even know what happened to them, but I always used them. The Pogs, those went bye-bye a long time ago. But it was even then, like, just like stuff like that. That's, you know, she always just wanted everybody to be happy. And, you know, even now, like, part of me is happy she's not seeing all this wackiness right now. But the other part of me is kind of not jealous, kind of wants her here. Because I have no doubt that she would go through this with like absolute style. She wouldn't let something stupid like lockdowns and all that get to her, to say the least. She'd find her own fun, I guess you could say. Or at least to shop on QVC for 6 months, you know, something like that. She'd be cool with that. My mom was awesome. That's the only way I can put it. She really cared. She cared about everybody who came into my life. She cared about, you know, my girlfriend. She cared about me, obviously. But it was also kind of strange too. It's like, for everything that's worth, you know, she always defaulted the games and stuff to my uncle, because ultimately she didn't really understand it, and she didn't care to try to understand it. She was her job, as she put it, was the emotional piece. She's like, she had to make sure I was okay. She didn't care if she handled the fun stuff. She just wanted to know that, you know, she had her buddy, which was me. And because for the longest time it was really just the two of us, because my dad was always working overseas. And I was young, and she used to drag me around to places. She used to have to bribe me to do things. She'd be like, "We'll stop at Toys R Us," and I was like, "Yeah, do I get to buy anything?" And she's like, you know, like that sort of thing. But it's all fun. I mean, that's like probably my favorite joy about doing YouTube back in the day, was I got to relive all this stuff, even just a little bit. Even if I don't have a visual to go with it to share, it's something that I have a visual. And it's honestly, it's very therapeutic. But if you have somebody that's super special to you, you know, cherish every single moment. Because they're all magical. Even the shitty ones are magical. Anyway. Whew. So I guess that's going to do it for today. Don't really want to talk about much of anything else. This was more so for her. So anyway, guys, I'll see you next time. Take care.